Regular meeting of the Fargo School Board. We do have President Rebecca Knutson joining us via phone, and I am sitting in for her tonight as Vice President. Rebecca, can you hear us okay?
I can, yes. Thank you, Robin.
Okay, right on. Okay, we have an agenda in front of us. I would entertain a motion. Jim?
I move adoption of the agenda as provided with the addition of the HR addendum that was at our workstations.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion on the agenda as presented? All those in favor, please vote by saying yes.
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 Any opposed? No.
Yes.
Okay, we will proceed. Recognition of the audience. We do have 3 constituents that did sign up to address the board tonight. As you approach, there is a podium down here right in front of the stage that it's very hard to see with these lights. I apologize. But I think 5 minutes per speaker should suffice. At this time, the board will hear comments from the public, and we ask that each speaker who has signed up to address the board state their name and address for the record. We would also ask that speakers refrain from using this forum to criticize or complain about a specific employee by name. The board is interested in your comments and will listen carefully, but is not obligated to respond or debate issues in this forum. Should you request a written response to a specific question, you may request it. This evening, each speaker will be allotted a maximum of 5 minutes. The first person that signed up to address the board listed his name, I assume his name is Andy. Andy, you want to approach the podium, please?
I'm getting there. I had my L5 go out a couple days ago, so that hurts badly. I appreciate you all. First and foremost, I did attend the open meeting a couple weeks ago, and Robin, I had some discussions with you as well as everybody else, or a few of you, about having the public here, and I really appreciate that. Your service is greatly appreciated. There's a couple of things that I wanted to move through with you, and the first one is, Rupak, you mentioned that the school is putting their directive out for the opening of the school system. The one thing that I talked with Kristen Baszler about was the efficacy of mask wearing. I don't know if any of you have looked at the CDC, their guidelines and their approach to what's a good mask or not, but I asked Kirsten this question. For many of you, you're wearing cloth masks, and the CDC is saying that the efficacy rate of that mask is somewhere between 10 and 15%, which means that about 85% of it is not effective. And the parts per million with this virus, they're very, very tiny, so they infiltrate those masks very easily. So I asked her the question, I said, is a school, Fargo Public Schools, going to come to the table and buy N95s for each student to wear once a day? And that'd be pretty expensive. The other thing that I'd like to keynote is on the mask wearing, that there is a large constituent of parents out here that do not believe in wearing masks whatsoever. If we look at the death rate in the state of North Dakota, if we take the total population against the total deaths that have occurred in the state, that number comes out to 0.00015. And have any of you talked to the head of CD or the COVID in Cass County? Has anybody done that? Might want to, because the deaths that we're seeing are much like that of a pneumonia, that the folks are older, they have pre-existing conditions and so forth. So I'd really like the school board to keep in note, obviously, the health concerns of the student, but also the students, but also the psychological impact it will cause by all of our students wearing masks. The second thing that I have on the agenda as a precursor to the meeting 2 weeks ago was that we got to see about 6 individuals stand up here with a group called Black Lives Matter. It's very, very hard in this day and age to stand up and voice some opinions that might be not lockstep with that group. In fact, many of us in this community look at this group as a black supremacist radical terrorism group. Might be hard for some of you to understand that, but like myself, I've done my due diligence to learn where the money comes from, what organizations that they're funding. We look across our country, we see people, these groups of people that are tearing down statues, no matter if it's Franklin Douglas or if it's General Lee. It doesn't seem to matter.
Case in point, 2 days ago on Sunday, we got to see that there was an altercation with a police officer with a gentleman. In Wisconsin, that city's burning. One thing to note, with the due process that's so very important in our Constitution as we sit here as board members in the community, we the people, I got to see last week that that wasn't going to be upheld, and it was a very, very, very troubling moment. I looked at guys like, Jim, you stood up and said, hey, we got policy. I know, David, you did too. Rupak, you did as well, and I really appreciate that. I think that the number was AP 3260 or whatever. But it's so vitally important that we do not have a judge, jury, verdict simultaneously. We have to create an environment of due process. Now, part of that due process infringement was caused by the Black Lives Matter congregation that stood up here. So I'm coming to you, and we're coming to you, and I appreciate that we have constituents here. If you look out in the crowd, you can see that there's a lot of people that aren't wearing face masks. There's actually people out in the crowd that are color. There are people that are white, okay? And these people have come because they're in support of what I'm talking to you about here today, all right? Just bear with me here. The case in point is Woodrow Wilson. Needless to say, I'd be the first to stand up here and say, hey, Woodrow was probably the worst president in our history. I'm an extremely conservative individual. This was a bad guy, okay? He obviously had the segregation of the military, but the one thing that I want to point out, he also was a strong proponent of the suffrage movement. And on my left side of the aisle here, I would think that would be very important to you. I'm talking about the ideology, and to understand that, this man was a Democrat running in the South, and then he moved to the northern region, and then obviously got in office and is president. The concern is what parts of history are valid to some and invalid to others. Interestingly enough, we have seen, like I said earlier, that Black Lives Matter tear down statues of General Lee and simultaneously tear down statues of Franklin Douglas. Franklin Douglas was a black man, and he was extremely conservative, and he was an abolitionist. Black Lives Matter here in Fargo is extremely calculated in who their first target is. They're targeting a socialist Democrat. Next in line will be Roosevelt, Kennedy, and so on, and this has been spoken by that community. After those accomplishments, our flag and constitutions hanging in our schools are next. Also, not to mention the social justice curriculum that has been circulating and taught to our children in other states. We will not tolerate that. Will we go from teaching our white students shame and guilt? Do we teach our college students that there's a fictitious boogeyman out there to get them? Do we teach our college students that they're born with a disadvantage? I think, and a lot of us out here in this community think, that is the highest form of mental slavery. We are seeing Black Lives Matter fabricate latent pain. Latent pain is something, if any of you are in business, what that means is that you're drumming up something that they don't know or the other person doesn't know about, okay? Case in point, I've called a lot of parents in the community. Okay, this is what I'm hearing. We don't even know who he is. Okay, so we'd like as a community to understand what this pain is and where it's coming from. Case in point, some of the people that came up here at Black Lives Matter a couple weeks ago are not from our community. Do you know that on their Facebook site, the ones that create the Facebook site here in the Fargo Moorhead community are from Minneapolis, that they're from Chicago, they're actually from other countries? This ideology is propagated from a Marxist theory, the same theory that was used in Russia and Germany. I'm going to read through some things. These are statements, these are ideologies that come from the Black Lives Matter movement.
Andy, can you wrap it up in about less than a minute, please?
Yeah, I'll be real quick. Thanks, Robin.
Thank you.
I appreciate you. The Black Lives Matter co-founder, this is an article coming from the New York Post, June 25th, 2020. Black Lives Matter co-founder Patrice Cullors said that a newly surfaced video in 2015 that she and her followers and organizers are trained Marxists. We are trained Marxists. We are super versed on sort of an ideological theory, and I think that we are really trying to do is build a movement that could be utilized by many, many folk. On the Black Lives Matter website, we disrupt the Western pre-described nuclear family. We foster a queer-affirming network. We dismantle the patriarchal practice. BLM Boston follows a queer and feminist theory. BLM Chicago, their demands are no cops in schools, no SROs. Their demand is remove CPD from all social services. Black Lives Matter Denver. This chapter is part of a national movement aligned in Black love, power, liberation over the embodied Declaration of Black Lives Matter, regardless, among other things, gang affiliation. We as a community, I'm wrapping up, Robin, we as a community, the group of people here, the hundreds of people that aren't here, we're afraid of this group and what it means to our school system. I caution all of you to respect your policy. I caution all of you to follow the school board policy and the Constitution. I encourage all of you to understand who you're listening to and what the motivation is behind the message. Have courage in your due process. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker that has signed up is Marty Livingood. Marty, would you like to approach the microphone?
Hey, thank you for listening to me for a little bit. My name's Marty Livingood. I reside at 3102 38 1/2 Avenue South in Fargo. And I know I look much younger than my emails make me sound. I'm here, one, to bring forth the concerns that obviously many people have about how the fall start is going to be held and how our students are going to be attending school in person. And that's evidenced by the two petitions that I hope that you have seen. One has over 800 signees, and the other one has at least over 300. And I'm sure some of us signed it, each one. Some of us tried to sign it more than once, but that's another story. So there's a lot of concern, and that's a really nice thing to see that people in our community are excited about education and what is best for our children. I'd like to mention two things. One, I think the new model that was decided upon is a much better model. It's much more defined. We all can argue with any model, but I think that will be much more transparent and easy for us to understand model. What my concern now is what's going to happen yet if things are at that hybrid model. And I'm speaking primarily to the middle and high school. I don't know if it's unclear. I know it's unclear to the public. I'm not sure if it's unclear to you guys or to the administrators. But my understanding under the new system, if there are 10 to 19 cases per 10,000, we go to the hybrid model for middle and high school. And under the current plan, and I'm sure no expert, but it appears to me that the high school and middle school would be meeting 4 times in person from October through the end of the semester under that current hybrid plan. And excuse me if I'm wrong in my stats there. I just think that we need more in-person instruction. Teachers are vitally important, and that amount of time spent with our kids will never be cut out completely. So I hope you guys have that discussion. I hope that it's not a plan that is cemented and cannot be fluid in nature. So we're looking forward to listening to the instruction, and some of us, of course, will give you our opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. The final person that has signed up to address the board is Leon Francis.
I'm Leon Francis. I'm a Fargo resident. I want to piggyback a little bit on what Andy spoke to you guys about. I'm not a fan of Woodrow Wilson. He was, in my opinion, he was a progressive. He hurt this country. He resegregated the civil service. A lot of things about Woodrow Wilson that I find deplorable. But I find even more deplorable than Woodrow Wilson is a hate group with the ear of some of these members. And that hate group is BLM. And I know this firsthand, that they are a hate group. If you have an email address, I could flood it with assaults, with intimidation, with terroristic threats and actions, with civil disobedience, with murder. David Dorn was murdered by a BLM protester. If you don't know the name, Google it. This is not an organization that you guys want to listen to in any capacity. It would be the same if Peter Tuft, are you guys familiar with Peter? If Peter Tuft came in and had the ear of any of these board members giving them suggestions that would affect the entire community, would you abide? Would you? The fact of the matter is, it's like Andy said, they're starting small with a target that they think that they can move. They believe that they can move enough people because Woodrow Wilson was not a great person. If they can get that target, then they'll move on to the next. They're not here to be a part of the community. They're here to change the community. I'm from the South, born and raised in Catahoula Parish, Louisiana. We have a saying in the South. You don't go into someone's home and move their furniture around. You leave it be. If they see a need to feng shui their apartment or their house, then let them do it. What I'm afraid of is loud, bullying voices from outside of this community coming in and circumventing the whatever protocols or practices or policies that you guys have set up without public input and change things. That should not happen, especially not with an organization like this. Do your research. These are not good people. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Leon. That concludes our public comment section. The next item on our agenda is staff reports, and we have Kim Belgard representing the FEA tonight. Welcome, Kim. I have been told that you and President Mastrud are rotating, so we're going to see Kim the second meeting of every month. Welcome.
My name is Kim Belgard, and I just started fifth grade virtual academy, so I'm very excited and worn out from that adventure. I am excited to have a senior at NDSU completing his degree in mechanical engineering, and I have a freshman starting at United Tribes Technical College, and he will be studying elementary ed, so very exciting. I will also be the contact person for all elementary and virtual instructors. So Missy and I will be working quite a bit together and treading through that. My plan is to be getting out into every building this fall and speaking with teachers and administrators. And teachers are working harder than ever. They're planning for face-to-face instruction, distance learning, the virtual academy, planning their pacing guides, acronis lessons, special education, collaboration, and many different assessments. After last spring, teachers worked some hours from 6 a.m. till 10 p.m., making their Zoom meetings for as many available hours for families to attend. We are working on a contingency plan that is relevant and authentic for all learners. Many positions we know cannot be filled. There is just a huge learning curve from going from hands-on to virtual learning. And we want our professionals in the field making decisions regarding education. Again, as Governor Burgum stated, it is not about our seat time. We want to provide unique, authentic, and innovative education, which I believe this board does as well. Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you for all your work, Kim. It'll be quite the eventful year, I'm sure, for everybody. Next item is Superintendent Gandhi's report.
Sure. Good evening, board members. I think normally this would be our start of the school year week. So really just kind of want to spend some time acknowledging that and expressing my gratitude to all of the Fargo Public Schools staff that are back as of this week, and then also to our board members. Every other year, we would normally be doing our staff opener, which board members would be part of as well. And obviously, we understand that we can't have over 2,000 individuals in one location this year. So that would normally be an opportunity that we get to express our gratitude to the board members for your work to come. It is going to be very hard work this year, and we know that. Just know that you are appreciated, but so are all of our staff that are returning as well. So we're excited about a lot of the professional development that's coming. I think I've shared with board members our plan or just some rough plans for some schools and how they're using these days that we have until September 3rd, and you'll see that's very meaningful professional development, ranging from anywhere from how to transition to a distance learning model and using the technology tools that we have to making sure that we're prepared to execute any COVID-19 protocols that we need. So just wanted to express my gratitude and say thank you, and I know that the board members have also gotten a lot of emails and a lot of feedback on the Smart Restart Plan and other things, so just know that your work is appreciated, and it'll continue to be a challenging year, but it's rewarding, and it'll all be worth it when we see our kids next Wednesday.
Thank you. And I have to say that the board's work pales in comparison to what all of our educators are doing right now. So we thank you for what you're doing because of the situation that we're in. The next item on the agenda is the enrollment update, and it looks like Dr. Gross and Missy Eisness will present. Who would like to start?
I can go ahead and get started, but normally at this time, as I said before, it would be our first week of school, and we have a modified calendar this year, so Dr. Gross is just going to present to you from our hub where our enrollment data is, and it's a very live website, as you will see, where we are as of today, and then we'll go from there.
Well, thank you very much. On the screen is data from our hub as of 5/19 this afternoon or this evening. And what you'll see is currently in the Fargo Public School, we have 11,329 students who are enrolled. It is broken down by elementary, middle school, and high school. So approximately 5,129 elementary age students, 2,725 middle age students, and 3,412 high school students. In that set of data also includes the families or the students who have chosen the virtual academy option. And at the last meeting, we gave you kind of an overview of the total number at that time who have chosen the virtual academy. On the screen is an update of that. So currently, this data was pulled at 3 o'clock this afternoon. We have 1,415 students who will be taking advantage of the virtual academy. That'd be 716 elementary age students, 404 middle school students, and 295 high school students. So from the last time we shared data with you about 2 weeks ago, you can see there is an increase in the number of students or families who have said they want to take advantage of this option. This is a fluid number as well. On a daily basis, we are getting families who ask, may we please be in the virtual academy, and others who are asking to be removed as more information is made available about where we're at with our restart plan. So for the school year, as of right now, that's where we are sitting with a number of students, both in person and during the virtual academy.
I think the only thing that I would add is that we are seeing a significant decrease in kindergarten for this fall from what we expected. So last year, were around 960 students in kindergarten, and we were expecting about 960 for this fall. So that there's probably some families that have to think about, is this the year they want to send their child to kindergarten, because it's not compulsory attendance for kindergarten. And that is a question that I have been asked, is that a requirement to attend? So that is just something we have to keep our eye on, that maybe would change numbers next year for us.
I have a quick question. So because my neck is not that flexible. So you were expecting 960 kindergarten enrollees, and what is the actual at this point?
729 are enrolled as of today.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Just as a point of clarification, enrolled in the virtual academy, so how, or the other way around?
Nope, 729 is our total kindergartners.
Total. Got it.
Total, including the virtual academy.
Can I ask a follow? The minimum age is 7 that they,
Compulsory attendance is 7, but kindergarten is 5, and Bob, August 1st? By August 1st.
Okay. David?
Either Bob or Missy, if a child is enrolled in the virtual academy, how can they access school meals?
Cindy has written up locations, just like we did in the summer, for parents to pick up meals. And so that they are not, the only difference is what was wonderful last spring and summer is meals were free for all. And now it is back to the normal way that we charge for regular, free, and reduced. So they'll have an option to pre-order their meals and then pick them up. But the school would still provide the service. I don't know, Jackie, if you have anything, I think that's...
The only other thing I would add is that our nutrition services staff is really working on making sure that they can be as efficient as possible. So I know that for our virtual academy students as well, they're going to allow, I think, 1 or 2 pickups a week, and it might even just be 1 per week, and students can pick up meals for the entire week if that's what they choose to do as well.
Go ahead, David.
So if, looking at the elementary, if your child was going to school Monday and Tuesday, then they would be able to access their meals for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday as well?
So I think the best way to break it down is we're going to have, from my understanding, 3 different programs for meal distribution. One is just for the students that are enrolled in the virtual academy. Those aren't the students that are impacted by any instructional model that we have at all. Then Cindy also has a plan for that when we're in the hybrid model, and there's going to be specific locations for that and meal distribution as well. And then there's a plan for just traditional school meal as is when we have students in person in the building.
Which they handled very well this spring. Sorry, Dr. Gross.
Well, thank you. So listed on our public website, and I pulled that up on the screen, if you go to the COVID-19 section, over on the left-hand side, there is a link to nutrition services, and it articulates the plan that was just being described for how someone could order those meals, what the costs of those meals are, and so on. So that information is available, including the meal pickup process.
I don't see any other questions. I do have a question based upon some feedback, well, in the paper today. So there was a question about the sequence of asking about virtual academy registration, which I know, but hopefully you can restate that for the sake of reinforming the public.
So currently, we put out an initial survey to our parents asking if they want to be part of the virtual academy. We received a large number. We then opened up, as part of our Power School enrollment process, a way for families to affirm their wishes for the virtual academy. We have, since that time, emailed all of the families asking them, as more information is coming out, is this still your plan moving forward? And at that time, some families have said, no, we hear the other plans that you have across the system, and we choose not to do the virtual academy. We have also put on our website contact information for other families who at the time said no, but now they're rethinking their thought pattern about joining the virtual academy. So that is also part of that COVID-19 portion of our website.
And I think what I was getting at was sequentially, the district wanted to determine how many they would have to prepare for in person. And so that was very purposely the first step.
Correct. So the initial deadline that we had for the virtual academy enrollment, and that's the step through Power School where we allow that registration, that was, I think the deadline was August 8th, and that was intentional because the first meeting of the instructional plan committee was going to be on August 10th, and those numbers could impact our ability to know how many kids are in our buildings and based on which model. So that was data used by the instructional plan committee.
Thank you. Rebecca, do you happen to have your hand up that I can't see?
Thanks for checking.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for that report. I don't see any other questions. On to item 4D, first reading of the operational plan. Dr. Gandhi.
Sure. Every year, we present to the board administration's operational plan. The operational plan is our scope of work for the year, and it's this document is really a composite of a wide variety of departments throughout our organization. Really, the structure for us is, I know after this, I'll be presenting the first reading of our strategic plan. Our strategic plan provides the overall philosophy, and that was created in 2015 with a wide variety of stakeholders about where we want to head as a district. From our strategic plan, we have several long-range plans in our school district. Many of them are outlined scope of works for 5 years. We have a long-range IT plan, teaching and learning plan, a long-range facilities plan, a long-range financial plan, and then from that, every year we define the annual scope of work, which becomes our operational plan. Some of the things that will be highlighted this year in our operational plan are some of the things that we really told you when we presented the budget to the board, that those are going to be priorities for us. So obviously, technology and making sure that we are able to adapt to COVID-19 needs and make sure that we're providing personal learning devices for students at the elementary level is huge, so that's going to be a big scope of our work. Secondly is that work around equity. So one of the things that you'll see in the operational plan is conducting an equity audit. That's something that's going to allow us to look at where we are in terms of the scope of work that needs to happen around equity in our school district. From that equity audit, then our Director of Equity and Inclusion will then be able to create that 5-year long-term plan and then subsequent action steps for every operational plan moving forward as well. Lastly, I think it's just COVID, and not to use kind of COVID as an excuse, but really that's going to be our focus, is making sure that we're able to be flexible, nimble, and change our instructional plan if that's what we need to do, and adapt our school system. So we have made some modifications to our operational plan, and we took out a lot of the things from previous years. Once they become systemic, we take those out of our operational plan. For example, like a safety committee, when we're in person instruction and we're doing those meetings, we plan to continue with the work of the safety committee as well. So if something's been removed, it's not because it's not going to be a focus for us, it's because it's become operationalized across our system.
Okay, we've all had a chance to review this. Are there any questions for Dr. Gandhi? Go ahead, Jennifer.
Thank you. So thank you for the highlights, Dr. Gandhi, and I appreciate both the work that's put into the operational plan as well as the strategic plan, because it sort of, as you said, gives sort of a roadmap, right? And really what gets measured gets done. So really my question is around that specifically in terms of tracking progress. So obviously there are internal ways of doing so, but if, from a board's perspective and from a governance perspective, when we're looking at, I mean, certainly this is something that you and the staff, come up with, right? Because the board doesn't define the how-to, but we are responsible for, are we achieving? So could there be an opportunity within some of these documents to just say, we're on track with exception, and here might be those areas? Just a simple suggestion for discussion.
Sure. So I think there's two ways we can go about that. One is we do have an annual reporting where we present to the board the monitoring of our operational plan at the end of the year as well. So we are able to walk through everything that's been done and accomplished. But then the second thing is that when we have our different departments and different individuals throughout our district present to the board, I know they do some strategic plan linkages, but if there's something in the operational plan, we can do that as well, and they can say this is what we're doing, and this is what it looks like in our district.
Jennifer, so are you asking for some midpoint progress reports?
Kind of, and instead of, so as we talk, ongoing about governance models and ways to make it clear and defined when we talk about ends results. I just see this maybe as an opportunity to say, okay, how can we, instead of searching here and there, how can we bring it together and really just be purposeful in which ones are we meeting and which ones maybe aren't? Because at the end of the day, that goes back to what is the purpose, right? And it is education and student achievement. And so if these are things we're working on, and the board is approving this, like, what are we approving? Are we approving that we're accomplishing these goals? Are we approving that these goals sound good? Are we, because we're not the ones really saying, you know, what's in this document, right? And so I'm just sort of trying to find a way to say, okay, so if we're approving it, what are we approving?
So this is today presented as a first reading, not as a business item, because this is an operational document. But as you'll see kind of in the recommendation for the memo, we do 2 readings of this document and the strategic plan, so the board can give us feedback like now or even between now and the next reading if there's something that there's a scope of work that you'd want administration to consider, and we can have that conversation with the board. So that's really why, I mean, I think it's more of, while I appreciate a governance process because the board sets the vision for the district, administratively, we know we're able to define our scope of work based on our experience and what we know that we need to do. So that's really what this discussion is here. It is for that board to get that opportunity if there's something that should be a focus, shouldn't be a focus, and it doesn't have to happen here live. It can, or it can happen between now and the next reading as well, and we can have that conversation.
If I were to summarize the questions, it might be helpful for the newer board members to learn about, you present your operational plan, we'll approve at the next committee, or the next board meeting, and then at what point, is it usually in May or June that you say we completed this, or we had to change the plan because of this? And then how does that align with your annual, review, for lack of I can't remember the term.
And I think it's also important to know that, yeah, it's either May or June where we present the update.
May.
May, there we go. For the most part, our expectation is just that we are completing the operational plan. It's not, I mean, last year was probably one of the first years in that May document where we said COVID changed things, because we literally were not able to do some things when we didn't have students in school for the last 9 weeks. But besides that, our expectation is that we complete the work, because that ties directly back to our strategic plan and how we want to move forward as a district.
Jennifer?
Thank you. So I guess it would come back to, you know, when you ask what would be the suggestion, in terms of we are making progress, reasonable progress, right? Are we moving in the right direction? And if the answer is yes, like, how do we define that? Okay, so if Signia, Advanced Ed, I want to call them, is it Signia? Says, here's an imperative, here's an initiative that we highly recommend that the district is working on. Now, we haven't set that initiative, but we're also responsible for saying, hey, Mr. CEO, have we achieved this, because it was set out then as a recommendation and adopted as a goal by administration. The board then says, okay, yes or no, or you've demonstrated to us that it's been achieved. So it's in here that you're working on that, but it's not in here that we for sure accomplished that. And so that's where I'm going with that conversation, and really it's just saying, okay, this was the goal. Did we or did we not achieve it? And if we didn't, why not, or what's being worked on to make that modification?
So I think that's where I would say that's the May document. If you look at the actual operational plan action items, these aren't items that are really have a scale to the efficacy of which they were completed. Most of these are you going to do these or you're not going to do these, and that's what we're going to report out in in May. So our expectation is that these are the things that we're not going to do, and if there's something that we don't do, we're going to explain why. Now, there's some of these things that we're planning on doing that might not be directly in our locus of control, such as selling the district office. But obviously, we're trying everything that we can to do that, because that's something that we've identified. But all of those things take time and effort, and I think what we're just asking for is that flexibility of understanding within our scope of work for us to determine what our goal is. And that's the way we manage in our organization. We give each of our departments, this is your task and your charge for the year, and then they have to complete that, and they know what their workflow is throughout the year to be able to do that. So when the board puts in internal progress monitoring throughout the year, then you're redefining the prioritization of the work that they have to do. That could impact the workflow that they have throughout the year, because it does change sometimes. And then I think my second piece, the most important question would be, I don't know what the value add of that is, because our expectation is we complete and fulfill our operational plan, and we report to you in May. That's just what we expect to do.
And I would say, as a CEO of a multi-million-dollar corporation myself, I tell my board, or my board approves my work plan for the year, and I let them know if I'm off track and I'm not going to be able to complete it, and can you help me? But that's where you have to have faith in your CEO. That's at least how I operate. It works very well, and I've not had anything to think otherwise from this administration. Are there any internal? Oh, go ahead, Brian.
Well, I think, too, you can review the plan, and throughout the year, you can see if it's being accomplished or not, so.
Okay. Jim?
Just one little typo for Anne Marie. On page 2, the last sentence, I think it's supposed to be 2021, 2022, not 2020, 2021.
Thank you. Okay, this does not need any action tonight, so we move on to the next agenda item, item 4E, first reading of the strategic plan approval. You know, I can say that now that I got my braces off. Strategic. Rupak, Dr. Gandhi.
So the Fargo Public Schools Strategic Plan was developed in the 2015-2016 school year. It is a living document that gets reaffirmed every year by the board. Last year is probably the one year where there was more significant changes, not in terms of necessarily the content, but the way some of the strategic plan action items were worded to become, I think, more measurable at the request of the board. However, to make some of those things more measurable, we had to put in a measure to a student achievement assessment, which was requested of us, and then some of those achievement markers did not happen because those assessments didn't happen last spring when COVID hit. So that made it a little bit more difficult. So I think we're going back this year not knowing what state and national assessments will happen and won't happen to the way the strategic plan was originally kind of phrased. The one big thing that would probably to take a look at is we're continuing our work towards standards-based instruction. At this year, it was supposed to be an expectation that evidence-based reporting began at the 6th grade level. We are having conversations with our teachers because of the fact that now we have teachers in 3 different environments, whether it's a distance learning environment, whether it's a hybrid environment, or teaching in a virtual academy. As a system, that create some additional challenges, and that might not be something that we can put as an expectation across our system for this year. That doesn't mean that we're not going to continue providing professional development on evidence-based reporting. That doesn't mean that we're not going to continue working towards that direction, but it might just be something where our long-range teaching and learning plan gets shifted for 1 year in terms of when that expectation is that all of our teachers are accomplishing or using evidence-based reporting, because we're going to have essentially 2 schools running at the same time this year, a virtual academy and then our in-person school, and it's going to be a little bit harder to do. We want to be more uniform in terms of our how we're reporting student progress and student achievement.
Thank you. Again, we've all read this. Jim, right down to the last year, academic year. So any comments on the plan that's presented here? And this is a first reading again. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Thank you. I guess my comments would be similar in around, so ESSA specifically has these measurements put in place, right, in terms of which grade levels, they're requiring the evidence-based reporting around. And so specific to that requirement, could that be something that we could and should have within the strategic plan? Because it does identify, again, as an initiative, student achievement growth. But are there certain areas of focus that, the board is directing? Is there, but, whether or not it's being directed by the board, clearly that's an overarching goal of an education, district. And so what does that look like? And which groups, I know that you report for ESSA purposes, but there aren't numbers included in this document. So again, it would go back to, and it's to me, it's not about not having faith or not believing that it's happening. It's just really about being purposeful. And again, it goes back to the board governance role and what we're ultimately responsible for holding the district accountable to. We're not telling them how, but we are saying, is it happening?
Okay, I don't see any other hands right now. Again, this is a first reading. If you have any internal recommendations that you would like to pass on as stated in the recommendation portion of this memo, please do that, and I am sure that the administration will take those to heart. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Jim?
I move adoption of the consent agenda with the addition of the HR addendum.
Second.
Okay. Motion's on the floor. All those in favor, Anne Marie? Or all those in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? No. Those items are approved. Thank you. On to the business section, 6A, bond sale resolution. Jim?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the resolution determining that no protests were filed, adopt the resolution providing for the public sale of $12 million of limited tax school building bonds, Series 2020, and adopt the resolution providing for participation in the school bond credit enhancement program.
Second.
Motion's on the floor. Any discussion? Jim?
Jackie, just to help us all understand, could you tell me what the school bond credit enhancement program is?
I can try. I'm not sure I know 100%, but it allows us to basically do what it says, is be in, North Dakota, I think, adopted that in 2015, maybe, to where it allows us to be part of the credit enhancement program, which then really lets us hopefully get a better rating on our bonds. So we've tried to do that. I think on the last few that we've issued, we've been accepted into that program, and I was hoping I would have some preliminary rating information for you today, but it got pushed back till tomorrow with Moody's. So we should be finding that out pretty shortly, though, what our rating does come in at.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
I guess I just feel obligated to say I'll vote no, just simply because I would have, or I supported spending the 12 million from the building fund where we currently have the money, so that's why I won't support a motion for this action required.
Okay, I've seen no other hands. I think we're ready for a roll call. Anne Marie?
And I will call your name last because you're leading the meeting.
Sure.
Okay. Holden.
Yes.
Knudsen.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Brian Nelson.
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
Paulson.
Yes.
Benson.
No.
Gullickson.
Yes.
Robin Nelson.
Yes, motion carries. On to board reports, committee liaison and correspondence report. We will start with, let's start with Brian Nelson. Welcome back from vacation, sir.
Great North, yes.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to report other than reviewing the committees that you have at your last meeting that was reported. I'm excited to be on those committees and look forward to the work that we're going to get to do this year and with all of you, and really look forward to it. That's it.
Go ahead, Jim.
Well, the good news is, Brian, you can start helping on those committees Friday at 7:30. Planning will be meeting at the district office. We're not going to be in the boardroom. I don't know, the last word I had from Jolynn, it would either be the depot room or the video conference room.
South High, room C30.
Oh, it's changed again.
Yep, so we'll be back here again.
We'll be over here Friday morning at 7:30 planning. You're all welcome to join us. Since our last board meeting, I attended governance. I attended a North Dakota School Boards Association Lunch and Learn, which is a new virtual thing we're throwing out there to our membership. And I thought the first one was pretty good. We're going to try to do a series of these. And we actually had a North Dakota School Board Association special board meeting to evaluate whether or not we could hold our annual conference in person or if we had to change it. And the decision was made to go virtual. And I think Anne Marie sent out a communication to everybody about how the new member stuff is going to go, how the law seminar is going to go, and how the delegate assembly will go. And I think that's it for me.
Thank you. Tracy? Thanks. August 14th, I had my first Fargo Cass Public Health Board meeting. August 18th, I was a part of the call with State Superintendent Baszler. August 21st, I too called in on the governance meeting, and then yesterday, August 24th, we had our COVID-19 instructional plan committee meeting. That's it for me.
I don't have too much to report other than, once again, as last meeting, I'm going to plug Lunch Aid. And we're still trying to get to that $20,000, and it's going on right now, and I believe there are musicians playing as we speak, so if you are so inclined to tune in on your ride home, we'd appreciate it. And yeah, we're just like we're trying to get to that $20,000 for those kids. So that's my report.
It's very easy to donate online.
Go ahead, Nikki. Great, thank you. For the Communications and Advocacy Board, we had an initial meeting with administration, Dr. Gandhi and Tamara Yuselman. Yes, to kind of start putting things together there and talking about how we could move forward. And we did sit an initial meeting, I believe that's September 3rd. Yeah, right away in the morning. And invites went out and everybody was able to accept, so that is good news. We're moving forward on that. Personally, I attended the governance meeting last Friday morning. I did some work through the state of North Dakota on a couple of various task forces I'm on. One of them is Portrait of a Graduate, and the other one is Continued ESSO work. I also was on the Superintendent Baszler update call, and I attended my first meeting with the FPS Foundation. Thank you. Jennifer?
Thank you. So I attended governance this last week via dial-in. Really not as a participant, but just there. And I have a clarifying question, hopefully maybe someone can answer for me. So number 3 on the agenda was format review of EL policies and monitoring documents, and there was some discussion around our ratings and then, you know, shared input or suggestions on how we might change. And what I'm wondering, my clarifying question is the intent of the committee to bring that forward for the full board to further discuss or to have dialogue around any sort of modifications that may or may not come out of that discussion? Or was the plan to modify policy and put it on the consent agenda?
You know, I believe that President Knudsen was going to go with that. I personally can't answer that, Jennifer. Rebecca, are you able to answer that question or give any insight?
So Jennifer, I heard part of your question, but I don't believe I heard it in its entirety. Can you give me a rundown again of what your question was?
Yes. So the suggestions that were made, specifically, here's one example, around in compliance or not compliant or partial compliance. There was discussion around that and possible modifications being suggested. My question is, will those suggestions just be done, like, will you be changing policy and putting it on the consent agenda, or is it intended to come as a recommendation to be considered for the full board to discuss?
I believe what we discussed at governance, and I don't have all my notes with me, but you'd have to, also can refer to the minutes that came through from Anne Marie, but that the governance committee had discussion and had the authority to be able to make decisions regarding the changes to those documents. I believe we were talking about executive limitations documents at that time. And so Anne Marie and I too are going to be visiting, because there's some language changing that we're going to be including on that form to help us just kind of provide us with some better guidance and understanding in terms of how to fill out the form and the purpose of filling it out. So does that help answer your questions, Jennifer?
Well, it leads me actually to a follow-up question, if that's okay, Rebecca. And when you say that the committee had the authority, so could you clarify for me? I guess my understanding was normally that comes to the board, and the board has the full authority, not a committee. So
Rebecca, I'm going to interject here. I know that Anne Marie has something, and my understanding was that discussion would be coming to the work session, but yes, so Anne Marie's nodding and smiling.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the way we left it at governance was that Rebecca and I would make the suggested modifications, like Rebecca said, work on those directions, that type of thing, and then we would bring it to the work session that we're looking to hold in October. I've heard from almost all of you, thank you very much. So we'll get that solidified here soon, but to that work session in October, and then we'd have that for discussion. So the policy monitoring document, how they are created or formed, isn't necessarily in policy itself. So the way it was left at the end of that meeting was we'd create that template and then bring it for discussion.
Thank you, Anne Marie.
Does that answer your questions, Jennifer?
It does, it does. And that's, I mean, I was hopeful that there was going to be like a suggestion and opportunity for really, especially because we're going to do this training. And thank you, Jim, by the way, for offering to host or to lead us in that discussion. And so I just saw it as an opportunity, well, you know, instead of making changes prior to really engaging everyone in the discussion, it made sense to me to just suggest that we have that discussion all together. But so there was that clarified. And I also dialed in and listened to the conference call with Superintendent Basler. And I believe that is all I have on my notes. So thank you.
Thank you. David?
Last Friday, I attended the governance meeting. I'll be attending the planning committee meeting this Friday. And I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge all of the emails that I would imagine all of us are getting. Parents are very, very concerned, and I empathize with them, and I share many of those concerns because, in my opinion, the place that teachers do their best job is in the classroom face-to-face with the students. I don't think that anybody would dispute that. And teachers are frustrated. I think many, the parents are frustrated because they feel that we're trying to block that from happening. And I think it's important in our communication with parents to let them know that every single one of us wants things back to the way they used to be. We all want the kids in school every single day, and we intend to see that happen just as soon as it's safe for that to occur. So it's not that any of us don't want to have school. It's a fact that with the instructions that we've been given by the governor and the task force that meets every 2 weeks, we're trying to do what's best And unfortunately, that is not going to satisfy everybody. It's just the way it has to be right now, and hopefully we'll all be back in school very, very soon.
Thank you. I think that that's a very good statement. President Knutson did text me some things to report, but I will leave it up to you if you want to verbally report out to the board. Rebecca?
Sure. I'll just share. Of course, I was at governance last Friday. I sent an email out to all of you letting you know that I was going to be I was at the Human Relations Commission last week. They had asked me to come and give a little bit of an update regarding our school naming policy, so I did that. I was also on the call with Superintendent Basler on the 18th. I'm looking forward to the September 3rd meeting of the Communications, Engagement, and Advocacy Committee. That committee is going to have a good deal of work to do right off the bat. Also on September 3rd at noon, I will be attending the Native American Commission meeting. David, thank you for your comments. I thought that they were spot on as you finished out your report this evening. I want the kids back in school too. I want all of our teachers back in school. I think we all do. It's a terribly difficult time. Also appreciating everyone that is reaching out to us with their concerns, but also their cares and their ideas and solutions and willingness to help. I've seen that also. So I've seen some families with deep concerns. I've seen also families with concern and willingness to help, really for our whole school district, not even thinking more broadly than their entire, than their own family unit. So I just want everyone to know that, of course, we're all in this together. We need to be in it together, and that's going to be the best way for us to get back into the buildings like we want to. I will plan to attend planning Friday as long as the phone is able to get set up, because I would like to be witnessing that discussion. I'm looking forward to that. And Robin, thank you so much for leading us in the meeting this evening. That's it.
Thank you, Rebecca. My report, August 13th, I attended a P12 Alliance. Many of you heard about Superintendent Blazler talking about this. I did have a handout. This is kind of the fruits of our labor of how to help families navigate virtual learning, and particularly those families that are not as engaged. So that is for your reading and enjoyment. On August 18th, I attended a Chamber Public Policy Committee, and really that meeting was about measure number 3. There was a proponent and an opponent, and that's now a moot point because it's no longer on the ballot as of today. Community Development Committee is my new favorite committee. We met, I don't even have the date, same date, August 18th. They are really focusing on COVID and Red River Coalition COVID dollars, and really loosening up some of what those dollars can be used for. On my way out of the meeting, I'm like, Rupak, guess what? Give them a call, because they actually asked about what the district may need. So we're working on that as well. But great committee, a lot of influential or effective community members that are on that. Basler statewide call, she wasn't able to be there because she was called to another meeting, but of course that really talked about the federal funding buckets. On August 21st, Governance Committee, like the many others, and then August 24th, I sat in yesterday morning as an alternate on the Instructional Committee, just witnessing that. And then Rebecca had mentioned in a text, now I've got to get it. Sorry. Reminder to all committee chairs to set committee work goals and to have them ready for September 22nd meeting. And then I have a quick question before we close. So for committee meetings, are we having call-ins available at every meeting? Is that the intent, or do we need to request that? Maybe Anne Marie, since you did the governance?
We typically don't set up a phone unless it's requested. So, if no one's on the line, then we wouldn't need to set it up and, do those steps. So, if someone wants to join via conference call, we'll just be asking myself, Jolyn, or Betsy, depending on the committee, if there's a call-in need.
Very good, thank you. And then we'll be working on Governmental Affairs Committee, setting up a date for the second half of September. I believe that covers everything on the agenda.
Robin?
I'm so sorry.
And if you want to mention the interim meetings tomorrow as well.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, legislative interim meetings for funding, there's 10 to 3 tomorrow, so that'll be a ball of fun if you want to tune into that. And then there's another one that you sent me to, Rupak.
The interim policy committee meeting for education will be tomorrow from 2:30 to 4. So on the North Dakota State Legislature website, you can get both of those, the links to watch both of those live tomorrow, but just important discussion as we gear up for legislative session to follow along with what's happening with the interim education committee and the interim policy committee. So 10 to 3 and then 2:30 to 4 is the other one tomorrow.
Yes, go ahead, Rebecca.
I'm sorry, I forgot one thing here. I just didn't have it written down. But I have been in conversation with Jennifer Mastrud, FEA president, and we are going to be planning time to get together and visit either over the phone or in person after school gets started. Of course, she's busy with all the plans that she needs to be taken care of, and so she decided it would be best to get school going, and then for she and I to have some dialogue after that. So once the school year kicks off, I will be in contact with Jennifer Mastrud, and we'll get something set up, and I'll report back from there. Thank you.
Great. Jennifer, go ahead.
I was trying to get your attention before you adjourned.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Actually, if it's okay, I have one question as well. To maybe take this opportunity, Dr. Gandhi, on the most recent email update, in terms of the restart plan, there was the chart shared with everyone. So depending upon the number, if we're in the range right now between the 10 and 19, and I believe it was a question as well from a constituent here this evening, does that then mean, because it does say hybrid middle school, high school, does that mean Fargo is going to change their direction in terms of going all virtual October 5th, or when does that decision?
That would be hybrid, so meaning it would be the rotation for middle school and high school, correct?
So does that mean as of today then, or as of when? Because if we're in that range of rotation.
The committee would decide September 21st,
Okay.
and for that change to happen starting October 5th.
So prior to school starting, we're not changing anything?
We are staying in
Correct.
level 3, correct?
Okay, thank you.
I think it's important for people to remember, too, it's not only the numbers, there's some substitute fill rates and some teacher availability. So I know Tracy feels really good about how that meeting went. So, very good. Okay. Looking for hands. It's really hard to see hands at this angle. Okay, the next meeting is September 8th, and we are adjourned. Have a nice evening.